welcome to the hard sell where the stick in the swill-bucket rattles back, and welcome to part 2 of our forensic investigation of British Airways in Not Brand X. When we left off, the airline had just been privatised and celebrated with one of the most iconic adverts ever made.
Together.
Ah, good times. The big face was so good and so memorable that it ran on and off for 6 years. Which isn't to say they didn't advertise otherwise in that time, that would be silly. Although Saatchi had set the bar remarkably high with that one, which is part of the reason it took so long to follow it up properly. There was one particularly elaborate stunt a couple of years later, which you may not have seen. It only ran in cinemas and only a few times, for reasons that will soon become clear. Just bear with it.
This weekend, love is in the air. British Airways holidays can offer you weekend breaks in 41 romantic destinations.
Can't be.
Like Paris.
That's Nigel.
From just £129 per person, including flights and hotel.
That's my boyfriend. Nigel? Psst. Nigel! Wait. Nigel! Nigel Baxter!
Michelle?
Hello, Nigel.
Ah, Michelle.
Michelle?
Hi, what a surprise.
Oh, Bet. Having a nice time?
Yes, no. I mean,
I thought you said you were away on business.
well, yes, sort of.
Oh, I see. And this is your business colleague, is it?
Nigel, who is this?
This is a Michelle, Amanda. Amanda Michelle.
Well, who's she?
Well, she's a friend.
Friend? Girlfriend, Nigel. I'm his girlfriend.
Well, what a coincidence.
Look, I can explain.
Yes?
Well, you see, the thing is, the point I'm trying to make,
We're waiting.
Well, it's a case.
We're all waiting, Nigel.
Yeah, seems he's been stringing us both along, Michelle.
I think so, Amanda.
Oh, come on, don't be like that. I mean...
Goodbye, Nigel.
Michelle.
Surprise your loved one with the British Airways Holidays City Break. British Airways Holidays City Breaks from £129.
Cleverly done, harder than it looks, and sufficiently meta and avant-garde that they needed to get BA's chairman Lord King himself to sign off on it before they could proceed. There were, after all, many ways it could have gone wrong. Fortunately, it only did once, and it wasn't the fault of the actress or anyone else involved with the advert itself, except in as much as they probably should have explained what was going on to the ushers, who ruined everything by asking the actress to leave the cinema for causing a disruption. Most advertising in this era was reactive, promoting new ideas and strategies BA was trying out, making Gatwick into a second hub, for instance. Heathrow was their traditional headquarters, of course, but now it was a PLC, BA was growing. It absorbed British Caledonian in 1988 and Dan Air in 1992. Both of those operated out of Gatwick. Yes, including British Caledonian, go figure. So Gatwick was appointed as the secondary headquarters for British Airways, operating out of the North Terminal, which was supposedly the quieter terminal because of reasons. So when it came to making the public aware of this, that's the angle the advertising took. It was a more relaxing way to fly the flag.
You can now fly British Airways to 50 destinations worldwide from London Gatwick. because it's from the quieter North Terminal, you'll simply waltz through. London Gatwick, the hub, without the hubbub.
Yes, but whether anyone actually believed that is ultimately irrelevant. It's what they were told. And if it did indeed turn out to be a load of old bollocks, it was far too late by the time they found out to do anything about it. Notice the generic BA passenger is still a businessman. Notice also the music. Delibes' Flower Duet, albeit in waltz time. Thanks to the Face advert and its specially commissioned Hooked on Classics version by Malcolm McLaren and Yanni, the Flower Duet almost immediately became essentially the theme tune for the airline, which it essentially remains to this day. The Gatwick as hub idea didn't work out in the end, though, ultimately absorbing far more money than it generated. By the turn of the century, the airport was de-hubbed again and scaled back. Part of the reason for having done it in the first place may have been the increasing growth and sharpness of a particular thorn in British Airways' side, called competition, and more specifically, called Virgin Atlantic.
Today we are flying a 747.
Flying a 747. A 747.
747.
Most airlines fly the same planes.
Steak or chicken?
Or steak. Or chicken.
Or steak.
Most airlines serve identical food
Please, fly with us again.
Fly with us again. Fly with us again.
Fly with us again.
and charge the same fares on the same routes.
Please.
All but one. Virgin Atlantic to New York.
What do you recommend?
Actually, I prefer the fish.
Our standards are as good as, if not better than other comparable airlines. It's only our fares that are lower. Virgin Atlantic. We cut fares, not corners.
Virgin Atlantic was formed by Richard Branson, naturally, in 1984, and quickly became a close runner-up to BA. Their advertising strategy was highly bullish and self-praising, as you'd expect, but also leaned heavily on deliberately needling British Airways wherever possible, often going right up to the edge of what the British advertising industry considers acceptable practice. BA's initial strategy to deal with this was just to ignore them, carry on being the best, and more importantly the classiest, and let the market figure it out for themselves. This became harder to do after they were privatised, and therefore, competition-wise, working without a net. And it approached impossibility by 1990, when Virgin were awarded their own slots in BA's precious Heathrow, shortly after mounting a highly publicised rescue mission of British people stranded in the Gulf. This was becoming serious. BA were in danger of losing their control on the market. Lord King hosted a meeting at Gatwick with one simple message: do something about Branson. But what? A huge marketing push? They were already doing that. They just released the greatest airline advert of all time, for God's sake. There was really nowhere to go, advertising-wise. Then someone, presumably, remembered that morals and ethics only matter if everyone agrees they matter. If you simply decide they're unimportant, a whole lot of other opportunities open up. Like hacking into Virgin's passenger records and having a good old rummage. Or impersonating Virgin staff members to get information out of real ones. Or ringing up those Virgin passengers and offering them upgrades. Or more outrageously, claiming their flight had been cancelled and offering to switch them over to BA instead, among various other cheerfully underhanded strategies. Branson eventually found out about all this via some guilt-racked BA whistleblowers, and as you can imagine, was not particularly amused. He effectively dogged British Airways in to the European Commission, accusing them of dirty tricks, which became the catchphrase for the whole scandal. BA were prepared for this, however, and launched Phase 2, Operation Barbara, which turned out to be a dossier full of negative spin about Virgin Atlantic that they circulated around the media. Much of it was either exaggerated or just complete and total bollocks. but it was all published anyway. It seemed to be working perfectly before Lord King got cocky and accused Branson of making the whole thing up. That turned out to be the last straw and triggered one of the biggest libel trials in British legal history. It was so massive that Branson had to sell Virgin Records, the place where it all started, to fund it. Long story short, BA lost big time. They were ordered to make a grovelling apology and pay nearly $1 million in damages, which Branson distributed among his staff because he's slightly less of a prick than some other billionaires. It was nothing British Airways couldn't survive financially, but their image had taken a pummeling. Time for a rebrand. After a few years to let the whole story be forgotten, of course. So in 1997, out went the pointy speed wing. In came the ribbony speed mark they use to this day. Kept on, however, was the voice of Tom Conti and the Flower Duet, now in a respectful arrangement by David A. Stewart. The theme now was leaning right into that world's favourite airline thing by embracing the whole global village notion that was fashionable among massive faceless corporations at the time.
British Airways, the world's favourite airline.
White people patronising other cultures, most of whom they used to subjugate, never really goes out of style. Maybe it's well-meaning, possibly, probably not. But at first sight, these still seem like a pat on the head from the Great White Father to me, whether they're from Microsoft, MasterCard, or some technology firm with an oblique abbreviation for a name and no hint at what it is they actually do. Still, this is far from one of the most egregious examples. If nothing else, it is an advance on this. Still, though, they do have cities in Africa. Anyway, that was just the start. This whole one world Whole Foods image wasn't just for one advert. It stretched for a whole company, including, infamously, the planes themselves. Up until 1997, they'd all had Union Jack motifs on their asses. But now, as part of the company revamp, they were calling it Project Utopia, came a whole series of new tail fins with interesting ethnic designs, from Canadian First Nations, Ndebele, and Indigenous Australian designs, to the distinctly less exotic likes of Sweden, Scotland, and even one from Cornwall. To be honest, they didn't all work very well in their context. Take this garish abstract art by Jim Avignon, for instance. Despite the name, he's German. Nothing wrong with the art per se, if you're into high NRG expressionism, but what's the point of putting it on the tail fin of a plane? There's a reason those things are usually decorated with simple shapes and colours. It moves very fast and very high up. There's not much opportunity to examine it in the kind of detail that a work like this requires. Most people are just going to see a blob of clashing colours and little else. And it kind of gives the game away that this whole exercise is about BA being seen to be doing art, not to mention being seen to be ethnic and cosmopolitan, much more than it is about art itself. They didn't all have that level of wasted detail, and I don't think a single one was unimpressive or truly aesthetically unappealing, at least out of the tail fin context. But it would have been much more impressive and appealing in, like, a gallery, where people could see them, and where they didn't clash with the surroundings, by which I mean the rest of the design of the plane, which was still crispy red, white and blue. Of course, none of these were really the main objection people had, at least not by volume. No, the main objection was the one voiced most prominently by that bloody woman with a bloody handkerchief.
She famously covered the offending
That's not British. We fly the flag, not these awful things, she said. British Airways, she argued, was in danger of losing its identity. Even though, as I said, the rest of the planes were still red, white and blue, and the company was still called British Airways, apparently all it would have taken is some reappropriated Botswana artwork crudely pasted onto their tail fins, and they forget all that forever. These corporations' memory like a sieve. So that backfired, sure, but on the other hand, all publicity is good publicity. Well, almost. Which was certainly better than the last time BA were being talked about. It was something that could be argued over even, to an extent. The general consensus, however, eventually formed that the fins were a bad idea, one way or another, either for jingoistic or aesthetic reasons. The obvious thing to do was to move away from the whole global village thing, repaint its tail fins with the Union Jack once more, and underline the British part again in the advertising. Ironically, they did that by hiring the late American humorist P.J. O'Rourke to deliver a monologue on how we don't make sense.
You guys kill me. For your national drink, you take a delicious Oriental infusion and dump cow juice into it. You get more rain in a year than Borneo. Yet the minute it stops, they hit you with a hosepipe ban. You sunbathe in your clothes. Your home is your castle, but your castle is no longer just your home. All it takes is one lousy mutt, and bang goes the Great British Reserve. You invent a sport that no one understands, and the whole world still whips you at it. And your most popular dish is curry. Nowadays, even your civil wars are civilized. Small country, isn't it? Sorry? When it comes to sex, we all know what you prefer, but you must be doing something right, because 17 million of us, Johnny Foreigners, would rather fly your airline than any of our own. I guess you should be proud of that, but that wouldn't be very British, would it? Sorry.
And stung by the criticism, we ended up doubling down on nationalism for the next quarter century until we ended up in the mess we're in now. Thanks, P.J. O'Rourke. They were serious about this going hard on the British identity. Their American advertising at the same time went with the same theme, only with the stereotyping even stronger and more painful.
You must hit it.
Thanks. Just like Mom used to make, huh?
What?
Never mind.
Strawberry? Don't mind if I do.
He's going to be out. Yes, he is. It's all over for England.
Typical.
Home, Dixon.
Righto, sir.
And no, they still don't understand cricket. That being the turn of the century seems like a reasonable place to stop, with BA insisting on its Britishness. 10 years later, they merged with the Spanish flag carrier Iberia to form the International Airlines Group SA. Headquartered in Britain, registered in Spain. To be clear, this is neither a good nor a bad thing, it's just what it is. BA itself, as a subsidiary of IAG, is still about as British as it ever was, at least post-privatisation, if that matters to you. And their contemporary advertising still contains a dash of patriotism, specifically in the slogan, even though otherwise it's the usual touchy-feely, we're so human sort of advertising that's popular these days. But you can't argue with the truth of that slogan. A British original. And I got through the whole thing without mentioning Concorde more than once. That doesn't count. You just sat through a Bob the Fish production. Nice! If you haven't already, you absolutely must check out bobthefish.org.uk. Literally hundreds more videos not unlike that one, adding up to days worth of entertainment and all absolutely free. But if you're not a cold-hearted skinflint, you can always support us on Patreon. For as little as anything at all, you can make programs like the one you just watched possible in the first place, and become eligible for bonus material such as glimpses of the book I'm writing about the BBC, monthly riffings on random commercial breaks, the complete archives of the angry political satire magazine Two Sons, and even the odd very occasional bonus video essay unavailable anywhere else. If nothing else, you should prevent me from starving and or freezing to death in the foreseeable future, so that'll be nice. No pressure or anything. You make it what it is.